This album is exhausting. Kanye West, Donda, album review. Let's chat about it. Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here, and I chat about this hour and 48-minute album from Mr. Kanye West. You know who he is. And yes, this review is very delayed. This was supposed to be up last week, but this album is gigantic, and my thoughts about it are so conflicted. It's taken me a while. Kanye West is someone that an artist that is near and dear to my heart in the best ways and the worst ways, to be honest. I mean, I grew up during his college dropout and late registration days. They meant so much to me growing up. But as I grew older, I appreciated the other side of Kanye that we've gotten just as much. I think 808s and Heartbreak doesn't get enough credit, especially with where R&B is now. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, one of my favorite albums of all time. And also, Life of Pablo was my album of the year when it dropped. But the last 3 years or so, being a Kanye fan has been like, I don't even know how to describe it. There was that string of albums he produced and put out, which led to his Yay album and his awesome Kids See Ghost project. But it also led to some kind of iffy ones as well. Which leads us to Donda. This album has been in production for seemingly forever. It's undergone name changes. It's undergone track listings. It was supposed to come out early this year. It didn't come out. He gave us a date that it was coming out. It didn't come out then later. Then Certified Lover Boy showed up and he was like, yeah, I'm going to release it Friday. Newsflash, he didn't even do that. And the result is an album. An hour and 48 minutes of a problematic, weird album. Spoiler alert, this album is probably the farthest thing from perfect. But damn you, Kanye, you put your fans through so much crap, through so many weird listening events with so many stupid stunts, and then you're going to give us an album like this. And truthfully, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff here. Personally, I love Jail. I love the bulky industrial-sized guitars here. I love the auto-tune vocals as well, and I don't care what y'all say. When Kanye is on his A game on a track like this, it turns into a damn near anthem. And honestly, it starts this album off on the right foot. It also starts this album's bizarre narrative, which is hard to follow. But this track is a happening at the end of the day. It's the return of the friggin' throne, baby. Jay-Z sounds great here. God Breathed, on the other hand, is much darker, much heavier. This sounds like a Yeezus leftover. Between the industrial-sized beat and his cocky burst, this is great. Like, it's over the top. It is so hilariously over the top, though, that he owns it. Man, this is a muscular, beefy jam, and it just pumps me up. And much like the rest of Kanye's material these days, this is heavily religious. There's a lot of imagery on this track, but it never comes off suffocating. Most of this album honestly doesn't. And yes, you can argue the last 2 minutes here did not need to happen, but I'm fine with it. And Off the Grid, easily one of the best tracks here. This is one of the more ferocious and grisly tracks here. Between Fivio Foreign and Lil Uzi Vert, they really sound right at home. And Kanye is in prime form. He sounds ridiculous on this track. Now, Hurricane has seen a lot, and I mean a lot, of versions and edits and different copies, but the one that we get here is actually pretty good. The Weeknd's contribution is pretty larger than life. As far as Lil Baby's verse goes, he sounds fired up. And between the spacious beat and the choir vocals, this feels like a happening. It's tracks like this that make this album, as far out and ridiculous as this album gets at times. When Kanye is on point, he hasn't sounded this conscious, this focused in probably 10 years. Praise God is really great too. I think a lot of the speaking samples that we get from Donda on this album, they actually work quite a bit. This is a dark, grisly banger going into God once again, God's mission. But between Baby Keem, Travis, and Kanye, honestly, they all sound really focused here. Not only that, but all three of their performances are inspiring. I love how dreary and nocturnal Okay is. And once again, Kanye sounds laser focused. This sounds a lot less bloated than whatever he's been doing for the last 10 years. But it's smooth as hell, and shout outs to Lil Yachty for sounding so dangerous on this track. Didn't know he had that in him. And I didn't know that Kanye had a track like Believe What I Say in him. The groove is tight and luxurious. It's got this silky feel to it all. And between the haunting samples and the gospel vocals, this sounds like something from College Dropout era Kanye that's kind of got thrown forward in time and warped into weirdo Kanye. And Remote Control is the kind of braggadocious bars that I usually don't care about from Kanye. But truthfully, even he comes off with a ton of swagger here, and for a guy that has never cared about Young Thug's music, probably ever, he makes this track. And I love how funky this comes off by the end. It has almost like a new disco feel to it. Also, the very intense Heaven and Hell is fantastic. I love the low-key, eerie beat and Kanye's very intense performance. Some of his bars here, some of his most creative of the entire album, and yet it's so simple. This actually comes off like some Kids See Ghosts leftovers, but I mean that in the best way. It's hypnotic, it's grandiose, it's wildly creative. And I thought Donda was going to be sort of a toss-away interlude, but it's actually pretty awe-inspiring. It's actually a pretty powerful memory of Kanye's mother. Oh dear. Okay, let's chat about some of these deep cuts though. Why is this album so long? And why is this album so bloated? Not really gonna waste much time on the Donda chant, but it's where Jonah starts really making this album go downhill for me. Now, Vori is on other tracks on here, and I thought some of his contributions were actually pretty fine, but this performance is so bad. It's so bad. And some of his lyrics just take me out of the vibes, the hypnotic, awe-inspiring vibes of this album. I gotta be honest, Junya actually lessened on me since this album dropped. I thought it was pretty good at first. But of all the tracks here, it doesn't sound like it's at home on this album. It actually sounds like really lost. Really awkward. Really awkward. 24 is a heartbreaker as well. I mean, I heard this opening multi-layered vocal snippet. I was like, wow, that's gonna be awesome. But Kanye's never been that much of a singer, and most of this track is him singing. And you know what? He's gotten better. I'll give him that. I mean, it's passionate, and his heart's in the right place. But at the end of the day, this sounds like Sunday service Kanye extras. And listen, it's not to say that gospel Kanye isn't interesting. When it's done right, it's super, super classy. Moon isn't that much better. I mean, I don't have a problem with Don Toliver. But this is so cheesy, and there are so many classy tracks on here. This just does not seem to fit for me. Look, this album is an hour and 48 minutes, and I don't know why. Tracks like this could have easily been cut. New Again, I can't get into this. I don't hate the pulsating synths. They're very graduation in 808's era Kanye. But this just sounds so phony and lost compared to some of the other conscious bars on this album. And Television, God, this is such a slap in the face to Pop Smoke. Still with me? Good. This review has been one of the hardest I've ever had to write. Keep My Spirit Alive, though, I think it's one of the better tracks here. Really love Westside Gun and Conway the Machine's contributions. It's sunny, it's conscious, and once again, this is a really great example of where Kanye can bring in spirituality to his music and actually come off pretty tasteful. Like, it's honestly heartfelt, really inspiring and dazzling. And let me tell you, and you can quote me on this, I think Jesus Lord may be the best track that Kanye's wrote in 10 years. The drama here, the heartfelt performance, Kanye's emotion on this track is one of the most overwhelming things I've heard all year. It's beautiful. If you have time for one track on here, and I know this track is plus 9 minutes, make it this one. Even Jay Electronica, who I've never been that much of a fan of, actually really blows my mind with his verse here. He sounds great. Lord, I Need You, on the other hand, this is exactly where his Sunday service project should sound. It's glorious, and Kanye's performance, once again, is tender and heartfelt. Outside of that KFC and Taco Bell line, my God. And for the slight Twitter beef that was between Roddy Ricch and Kanye West, I think their collab is actually pretty good. Yeah, Pure Soul's instrumental's right on the money. They have genuine chemistry. Not only that, but I didn't know that Kanye had a track like Come to Life in him. This track is ridiculous. This shows him going into his marriage with Kim, what went wrong, what he wished he did differently, his relationship with his kids. It may be the most sincere thing that Kanye West has ever wrote, and honestly, it's pretty breathtaking. Like, how can you hate this? Even this instrumental is heartbreaking. And No Child Left Behind is a real great experiment in simplicity. Minimal The minimal instrumental, the fairly straightforward songwriting, it's pretty straightforward, but it's a really nice finale to this album. But Kanye doesn't make anything easy. He could have just left the album here. But no, we get all these part twos and crap and just garbage. Like Jail Part 2, I don't even want to talk about this version. I thought the original was fine. I thought the original with Jay-Z wasn't happening. He's got to bring freaking DaBaby and Marilyn Manson on this for some trash. Okay, Part 2 is not necessary either. Nothing against Shensia, but I thought this track was fine to begin with. And Junya 2, I will say this, Jesus Lord Part 2 is okay. It's not a bad revision. I mean, it's pretty much the same track, but it's a little bit longer, and it has some verses from each member of the Lox. And truthfully, they all sound great here. I don't know if it needed to be on this album as one last 11-minute track. This is probably the hardest review I've ever had to write, and this is probably the hardest review I've had to do all year. The fact of the matter is, a good hunk of this album is some of Kanye's most conscious thoughts and most focused bars in years. There's so much of this album that is tender and heartfelt and well written and mesmerizing and hypnotizing and a real happening. Mostly his guests are pretty great too. An hour and 48 minutes though, Kanye. All of these part twos, a lot of the interludes, some of the trash that shows up on here. The fact is, there is a very solid B+ album buried somewhere in an hour and 48 minutes and 27 tracks. We don't get that though as the end product. There's so much to like here, and so much of this reminds me of what I love about being a Kanye fan and what I love about him at the end of the day, even though he is so hard to root for and it's not easy being a fan of his. There is enough here though that I think is commendable and actually warms my soul and reminds me of what I love about him at the end of the day. Just steer clear of the part twos, steer clear of some of the interludes, steer clear of a lot of this album. This thing is bloated beyond belief. If he trimmed this down to an hour, maybe even an hour and 10 minutes, this would have been a B+. But right now, I think it's a decent 7. Let me know what you guys think down below. Good Lord, this album has exhausted me. Let me know what you guys want me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.